So, we just finished this week's episode of One Punch Man Season 2.
Subscribe and tune in every week for our reactions.
This week it was episode 2, The Human Monster.
Ooh. And I've been looking forward to this bad boy for quite some time. The manga of this whole era of One Punch Man is very scattered, as we know.
Yeah, it's after the story ended and we're just trying to paddle water.
Come on back in. Come on in.
Honestly, one of the biggest things I'm excited about is just the complete, neat narrative threading of all the elements that I know technically happens.
Yeah.
And we're getting some of that. But yeah, Garo's introduction and just all of his interactions, all of his attitude. I'm loving it. Very classic.
Good, yeah.
Very classic.
Ripped the hand off, beat everybody up. It was pretty good. It's
ass.
as much as there was in the manga, honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that's all I want. It's One Punch Man is always very distilled and straightforward, and sometimes you need a little bit of that.
And what's kind of nice is they're pulling that through in the animation as well. So like everything is pretty. Like I complained about it initially, but I kind of liked how it worked in the fights, where you're focusing in on one thing. Yeah. But when you have the fight between Genos, is that how you say his name? Genos. And
it's Demon Cyborg.
Oh my god! Like we're getting just stills of them fighting each other. And it was nice to just focus on the artistry of the characters.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean,
like
the art's not at the manga level, so to me it's a little disappointing. Like, if they had paid as much attention as they do to Fubuki's breasts, as they did to Sonic's ass in the manga, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But they don't.
I love how we immediately said, like, oh, this is her powers. We just see her boobs. Wow. That's where all the money went for animation. Good God
telekinesis
damn.
Is what keeps those up, okay?
I mean, I'm not mad.
But I was really happy to see Fubuki and Sonic really going in and just be like, Saitama, I want you. And he's just like, okay.
Caped Baldy.
Everybody.
2 hours of nicknames. They could have came up with better.
They got everybody fighting over Saitama and his time, and it's great because, again, we're gonna keep talking about the animation until we get tired of talking about it. Yeah. But it's simple. But I was saying, I don't, obviously we're never going to get what we got before, so I'm just excited and happy about the directness, and I think it works perfectly fine with the comedic timing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, again, like we said last week, the timing they do have on check.
He fell into those tires, that was great. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stuff, again, it's not Dragon Ball Z wrestling, it's just bam, the punch happens, things are going on, and a lot of the humor is in the extreme reactions. Like, we still got that bleached out manga panel of Speed of Sound Sonico just shitting his pants.
Yep. So good.
Which is what was weird though, because like we said, the humor is so good, but like I think this animation style also kind of highlights where the story's a little weak. Like Saitama giving that huge speech to Fubuki, in contrast to last episode, was just kind of like, when did he get so serious? Like, where's the punchline here? Right. It did feel like a little stale. It was just like, how did we get to this place?
Right.
Yeah.
What mood was say? Like, what video game was he playing to put him in that?
That he override King's. I loved how King was totally cool with that. And he's like, oh, the button is smashed in.
What's he gonna do? He knows how things work.
I love how everyone still think King is like top shit. Like even Fubuki was like, he's known to be the strongest man, and it's like, okay.
And that's gonna stay that way.
It's so great because King being introduced more and more often. I mean, he's the perfect foil to Saitama. He's got the most serious, normal face in the world, but then like is a goof.
Exactly.
Saitama's the opposite, right?
I finished up on Mob Psycho, and I'm really getting a lot of how King and Saitama have kind of the same relationship that Mob and Reagan have. And this is even probably a prototype of that, because he did write this before that. At least I'm pretty sure.
Parts of it, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But it definitely feels that way, and I'm getting a lot of that. And I remember how great the dynamic parts of those relationships can be. So there's a lot to work with there, and that's always fun. Because again, it's about the humor, and the humor's landing to me. Yeah. But yeah, it's weird because he clearly wants he wanted the sister
Fubuki.
He wanted Fubuki and him to be like rivals, like because she's so morally opposed to him, like they're opposite. But again, it does feel kind of like you definitely feel the weakness in the story writing because he just puts them together. It's just and she doesn't like him, and and she is the opposite of him immediately. Again,
we're gonna run into that just because every character has to get compared to Saitama, and some of them are going to work better, and King's going to work perfectly every time, whereas, you can't just pull every other character out of a hat and be like, yeah, look at how meaningful this relationship is.
Yeah.
It's fair, it's just, There was a whole episode, like the Genos fight there was some cool stuff, but it's not. It didn't shake the episode. It wasn't like, oh, this was the Genos versus Sonic episode.
Right.
Yeah. This episode was spread.
Right.
You know?
I remember as it started, you were like, oh man, we're gonna.
Yeah, I was excited for that to be like a big moment. Because, again, the paneling in the manga is so crazy and cool that, you know, even if the animation quality was low, I wanted it to feel like it was really impactful.
Right.
You know, kind of putting these characters on kind of even footing fight-wise. But it just, again, the episode was a lot more even than I expected it to be.
I definitely got the translation. I mean, you know, they were very close, but I mean, you know, obviously, Demon Cyborg was more strong.
Well, we just spent less time, I think, on that fight than we even did just the old man at the hero headquarters talking. Just as far as like spending time, like it's like no, I mean. That was maybe 2 minutes of the episode, and the rest of it was all this other stuff.
Yeah. See, I think the direct pull away from the start of it, I could have, if they had spent more time getting into it, because they did that 20 minutes later thing, and then they were finishing the fight, and I mean, I guess that's probably how it was immediately paced in the manga as well, but even showing some of that at the start.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I would point out, with like Speed of Sound of Sonic's ass, like thing. The paneling on Garo and Sonic, the way he draws their bodies just basically, you know, with black paint on them, is so beautiful in the manga, but you have that time to linger on kind of their poses. Like, we really sped right through that pose where we have Genos on top of Sonic in that kind of ballet-like step pose.
Yes.
In the episode, you know, it just flies right by. But in the manga, you turn to that page and you're like, whoa, and you slow down and you kind of appreciate that, like, instant in time.
Oh, yeah, those poses.
Yeah, but here you lose it.
Yeah, I think that just with... Like, we talked about this. The animation team's obviously not as great as it was season 1. And I think that they took as much time as they think was good for a beat.
Yeah.
Really, when I know we want to appreciate it a little bit more because we were given so much in season 1.
And we waited so long for season 2.
Yes.
So...
I don't feel betrayed. I think that's what I'm still excited to see the episodes. They're happening. They're cool. I'm still reliving the moments. And
it's true. Yeah, I feel similar.
I feel engaged. The idea is, okay, which one of these fights is actually going to feel true? Like,
absolutely.
Like, do they get the metal bat like fight right? Like,
and I think it'll be the ones that have enough plot in there to make it be like, oh well, this episode is going to be 100% this fight. So then we'll just see that kind of like the style that they have with the fighting. We'll see that for the entire episode, and then
we are yet to see a fight that has like an emotional beat rather than a gag at the end.
Yes.
And Metal Bat's like one where again there's an emotional beat.
There is a big one.
A lot of Garo's fights have emotional beats kind of throughout them rather than just like Saitama punch something or like you know he like was absurdly strong. Like,
So if anything, maybe just that's where they're sinking the money into is in those bigger fights. Hopefully.
I mean, compared to like what we saw last episode, this is a lot more. Like a little bit of hype because like the first episode we really didn't see a lot of fighting. This episode, kind of fighting, but I guess it's still the start of the season. So I mean, I guess they'll slowly build with this new animation team.
Do you know how many episodes, or are we thinking?
No idea.
They have not.
Probably not that many.
Yeah,
honestly, but
we'll
why don't you guys let us know who you think would have won Genos versus Sonic if Saitama had not stepped in?
Yeah.
In the comments below. And
I got one.
We'll catch you next time.